Good evening. I am Jamie Byrne, and this is my short history of cigarettes. So, as we all know, the cigarette was invented by Susan Cigarette in 1871. But there's a history of tobacco smoking that goes back way into history, beyond the Romans even. Some scholars recently have come to believe that there may be a mistranslation in the Bible, and that the three wise men who visited the baby Jesus did not bring gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, but instead brought gifts of gold, frankincense, and a case of fine Monte Cristo Cuban cigars. My uncle loves these. I don't have an uncle. There are many other famous tobacco smokers throughout history, such as Egyptian pharaoh Tutankhamun, Aristotle, and Queen of Our Hearts and Queen of Scots, Mary Queen of Scots. She's not relevant. I just left her in because I thought she was pretty. So the cigarette was invented by Susan Cigarette. The story goes that Susan enjoyed going out for brunch with her besties, and she enjoyed smoking a pipe at the same time, but most brunch establishments considered a pipe to be too large and ungainly for her small and dainty female fingers. And so, as a compromise, Susan invented the beloved cylinder that we all know and treasure today. Now, the 22nd of March, 1871 is a historic day. This is the day that a cigarette was first smoked, and it was famously smoked outside the Oaxaca, next to the South Bank Center. Susan realized that cigarettes were an instant hit. Her friends were bumming them off her immediately, and having a keen business mind, she began marketing them and selling them very quickly rather. And they were originally sold under the brand name of Aphrodite's Long Nipples, coupled with that famous tagline of "Suckle on the smoky teat of a goddess." I know I have. By 1900, cigarette mania had gripped Europe. Queen Victoria was famously buried in a cigarette-shaped coffin. Monet's famous painting of water lilies covered in cigarette butts was hailed as one of the greatest pieces of art ever created. And the German government's decision to restrict the sale of cigarettes to over 16s helped create the first generation of cool, rebellious European teenagers. The sorts you meet at hostel bars, things like that. However, trouble was just around the corner. When the First World War broke out, people were unable to visit Zante or Malia and buy cigarettes cheaply from European airports, which they could in turn sell back to their friends down the pub back in Britain. And consumption dropped rapidly. The Daily Telegraph reported at the time that Big Ben was visible for the first time in 20 years, now that the cigarette smog had lifted from London. In order to combat this, the Duke of Swindon was appointed as the UK's first Minister for Smoking in 1915, and he was tasked famously with getting Britain sucking again. He immediately nationalized cigarette production, and factories that were producing things such as tanks or shells, the war effort, useless shit like that, they began producing cigarettes instead. The common layman could tell that these initial nationalized cigarettes had been cut with less smokable products such as brass and mayonnaise and tractor parts, and so were not particularly smokable. By the end of the war, though, cigarette consumption was twice what it had been at the start of it. Britain did indeed get sucking again, and it continues to suck to this day. Look out the fucking window. Thank you. The interwar period is known as the golden era of smoking. One of the conditions of the Treaty of Versailles was that Germany should pay war reparations to the sum of 5 billion cigarettes. These are distributed in turn to Britain's children and pensioners and performing monkeys as thanks for their part in the war effort. And it's during this time that we get the emergence of some of the great cigarette-themed radio programs that we all know and love today. Programs such as The Cigarette Forecast, Women's Smoking Hour, and in 1932 we get the emergence of the National Treasure, that beloved national program that is, I'm sorry, I haven't a Rizzler. I know I don't. I have been Jamie Byrne. Thank you very much.